Ho, every one that thirsteth, come you for water, and he that hath no money, come you, buy and eat. Yes, come, buy wine and milk, without money, and without price. Welcome to Harbinger's Inkhorn. I give this message only at the beginning of the books, not each chapter. I have come to offer water in a thirsty place, to declare the former things, and the new which come forth now, to proclaim the year of the Lord's good pleasure. Read along at www.mechon-mamre.org. That's www.mechon-mamre.org. Go to the top of the page, click the English Bible at the top. Then you can select the book that we're in. If you ain't online, you can follow along with your King James Version. Some words will be a little different, but the meaning, it can't be missed. I ask that you forgive me when I commit an error.
All right, we're going to start reading 1 Samuel today. And 1 Samuel begins with the story of Samuel, and then by the time we get to the end of the second book of Samuel, of course, we'll be in the time of David. So it's going to take us from the end of the time of the judges and take us to the beginning of the period I call the period of the kings, or this time of the kings. And we're going to see now what happens in this end of the judges, and we'll begin to see what happens in the beginning of the period of kings. And we can compare these to these prophecies that we've already received from the lessons we've learned in the book of Judges. And Samuel, we're just going to finish the book of Judges up. It's the beginning of it is the end of Judges. So we're going to go ahead and start in verse 1, chapter 1. Now there was a certain man of Ramathaim Zophim of the hill country of Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jerhom, the son of Elihu, and the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, an Ephraimite. And he had two wives. The name of one was Hannah, and the name of the other was Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. And this man went up out of his city from year to year to worship, and to sacrifice unto the Lord of hosts in Shiloh. And the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were the priests unto the Lord. And it came to pass upon a day when Elkanah sacrificed, that he gave to Peninnah his wife, and to all her sons and her daughters portions. But unto Hannah he gave a double portion, for he loved Hannah. But the Lord had shut up her womb, and her rival vexed her sore, to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb. And as he did so year by year, when she went up to the house of the Lord, so she vexed her. Therefore she wept, and would not eat. And Elkanah her husband said unto her, Hannah, why weepest you? And why eatest you not? And why is your heart grieved? Am not I better than 10 sons? So Hannah rose up after they had eaten in Shiloh, and after they had drunk. Now Eli the priest, sat upon his seat by the doorpost of the temple of the Lord. And she was in bitterness of her soul, and prayed unto the Lord, and wept sore. And she vowed a vow, and said, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your handmaid, and remember me, and not forget your handmaid, but will give unto your handmaid a man-child, then I will give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there shall no razor come upon his head. And it came to pass, as she prayed long before the Lord, that Eli watched her mouth. Now Hannah, she spoke in her heart, only her lips moved, but her voice could not be heard. Therefore Eli thought she had been drunken. And Eli said unto her, How long will you be drunken? Put away your wine from you. And Hannah answered and said, No, my lord, I am a woman of sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I poured out my soul before the Lord. Count not your handmaid for a wicked woman, for out of the abundance of my complaint and my vexation have I spoken hitherto. Then Eli answered and said, Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant you your petition that you have asked of him. And she said, Let your servant find favor in your sight. So the woman went her way, and did eat, and her countenance was no more sad. And they rose up in the morning early, and worshipped before the Lord, and returned, and came to their house to Ramah. And Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. And it came to pass, when the time was come about, that Hannah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Samuel, and because I have asked him of the Lord. And the man Elkanah and all his house went up to offer unto the Lord the yearly sacrifice as his vow. But Hannah went not up, for she said unto her husband, Until the child be weaned, when I will bring him, that he may appear before the Lord, and there abide forever. And Elkanah her husband said unto her, Do what seemeth you good, tarry until you have weaned him, only the Lord establish his word. So the woman tarried, and gave her son suck, until she weaned him. And when she had weaned him, she took him up with her with 3 bullocks, and 1 ephah of meal, and a bottle of wine, and brought him unto the house of the Lord in Shiloh. And the child was young. And when the bullock was slain, the child was brought to Eli. And she said, O my Lord, as your soul lives, my Lord, I am the woman that stood before you here, praying unto the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord hath granted me my petition which I asked for him. Therefore I also have lent him to the Lord. As long as he liveth is he lent to the Lord, and he worshipped the Lord there. Okay, let's go back up to verse 1. This is the story when Samuel is firstborn, and he's dedicated to God. Now, verse 1, Now therefore was a certain man of Ramathaim, Zophim, of the hill country of Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah. He was the son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, and Ephraimite. And we'll find here there's 5 generations to the family that he's from, and of course 5 is always going to stand for grace. And Ramathaim, Zophim, is a double plural, and what that means is the high places of the watchmen, both being plural, these that watch, and these places that are high. And it was in the hill country of Ephraim. Ephraim's always going to be the double-fruited. Elkanah means God creates. Jeroham, having compassion. Elihu, he is God. Tohu means lowly. Zuph, overflowing. And, of course, we know what the Ephraimites are. Verse 2. He had 2 wives, in verse 2. The name of the one was Hannah, and the name of the other Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. And we'll notice here, he has 2 wives. These are all 2's going to be the witnesses. And one wife has children. This is Peninnah, and her name means precious stone. And this stone also, the root of it would be pen, and it would mean to turn, or this precious stone of turning. And the other, Hannah, means grace. Now, we notice Hannah had no children, and Peninnah did have children. So Elkanah has 2 wives, and this is basically the story of Hannah and her child. And this man, verse 3, went up out of his city from year to year to worship and to sacrifice unto the Lord of hosts in Shiloh. And the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were the priests unto the Lord. Now, we're going to find out more about Hophni and Phinehas later on. And Eli, he is the head priest there in these days, and it means to ascend. And Hophni means the filling of hands, or has his hands full. And Phinehas, we know, means the mouth of the serpent. Verse 4, And it came to pass upon a day when Elkanah sacrificed, that he gave to Peninnah his wife, and to all her sons and her daughters portions. So Elkanah went up to the temple, as we'll find that he does year by year, to offer his sacrifice, this abundance, the abundance of his harvest. And he's gone up there, he goes year by year to offer that his portion, and he gives to his wife and her sons and her daughters portions to Peninnah. And to Hannah, verse 5, he gave a double portion, for he loved Hannah, but the Lord had shut her womb. And Hannah simply couldn't have no children. And as they went on the road, we'll find that her companion, verse 6, and her rival vexed her sore to make her fret because the Lord had shut her womb. So Peninnah kind of boasted and made fun of her, however, to the point that it brought Hannah down in her spirit, and she was sorrowful in her heart. Verse 7, and as he did so year by year, when she went up to the house of the Lord, so she vexed her, therefore she wept, and would not eat. So year by year, as they went up, she taunted and made fun of Hannah, and Hannah was always sorrowful, and by the time they wouldn't get there, she wouldn't eat, she was feeling lowly. 8, and Elkanah her husband said unto her, Hannah, why weepest you, and why eatest you not? And why is your heart grieved? Am I not better to you than 10 sons? So Elkanah her husband has come to her and says, why are you crying, and why don't you eat? I'm better than you. Am I not better than these 10 sons? And 10 is always going to be in reference to the law. So he's telling her, I'm very good to you. And so Hannah rose up after that, after they had eaten in Shiloh, and after they had drunk. Now Eli, the priest, sat upon his seat at the doorpost of the temple. And we'll find that that's where they're going now. They went up to the temple this time, and they've come, and he's finally talked her into eating a little something and having something to drink. And Eli, he's the high priest, he's sitting in his seat there by the doorpost of the temple of the Lord. So as you come up to the temple and enter in, there would be Eli, he would be sitting in his gate. And she was in bitterness of the soul, and prayed unto the Lord, and wept sore. So she was still feeling bad, and was crying unto God, and before God there at the temple. Verse 11, and she vowed a vow, and said, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your handmaid, and remember me, and not forget your handmaid, but will give unto your handmaid a man-child, then will I give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there shall no razor come upon his head. And we'll notice once again here that Hannah is making a vow unto God. And this story is very similar to the story of Samson. We had there the same situation, a woman that didn't have a child, but an angel appeared unto her. Now, here we have, she's gone to the temple. And she's making a vow, though it never mentions that he's going to be a Nazarite. This vow that no razor touches his head is a similar vow. And it came to pass, as she prayed long before the Lord, that Eli watched her mouth, or Eli watched her mouth. So the priest is sitting there, and he's watching her. There may not have been real busy, and she's the only one in there. And he's sitting there watching her. Now 13, now Hannah, she spoke in her heart, and only her lips moved, but her voice could not be heard. Therefore Eli thought she had been drunken. So Eli is watching her, and he sits there watching her mouth move, but he can't hear nothing, and he thinks that maybe she's had a little much to drink, or maybe she's drunk. And Eli said unto her, How long wilt you be drunken? Put away your wine from you. And he comes up, and he just says to her, How long you been drunk? Get away from the wine. Put it away from you. And he's trying to instruct her into a good path. And Hannah answered and said, No, my Lord, I am a woman of sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither the wine nor strong drink, but poured out my soul before the Lord. Verse 15. She said, I ain't been drinking, but I've been sitting here praying this long time. I've been pouring out my soul unto God. 16, count not your handmaid for a wicked woman, for out of the abundance of my complaint and my vexation have I spoken hitherto. And she's saying, don't count me as a wicked person of being a drunken. I have spoken out of the abundance of my complaints to God, and my sorriness in my heart, the sorrowfulness in my heart. That's why I've been here for a long time. 17, and then Eli answered and said, Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition that you have asked of him. So Eli blesses her now, and he says, in a way to say, well, I'm sorry, go in peace. And God grant you now that what you've asked for. 18, and she said, Let your servant find favor in your sight. So the woman went her way, and did eat, and her countenance was no more sad. So she got up and went her way, and she was lifted up in her spirits after Eli had spoke to her. And she said, now, good, let your words come to pass. Basically, let me find that favor in your sight, and let your words come to pass on me. 19, and they rose up in the morning early, and worshipped before the Lord, and returned and came to their house to Ramah. And Elkanah knew Hannah, his wife, and the Lord remembered her. And we'll see once again, they've went back home. They've got up early in the morning. They've went before God and offered again and made the prayers, and because it'll be a year before they get to return, and they went back home. And they've come to Ramah. This is where their place would be. Ramah means exalted, or a high place. And Elkanah knew his wife, so the Lord remembered her. So now we find that Hannah has become pregnant, and she's going to have a baby. 20, and it came to pass, when the time was come about, that Hannah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Samuel, because I have asked him of the Lord. And about 9 months later, this child would be born, and this would be Samuel. She would call his name Samuel. And Samuel means hears God, or listens to God. Verse 21, and the man Elkanah and all his house went up to offer unto the Lord the yearly sacrifice and his vow. So Elkanah, we find, also had a vow before God, and he had went up to offer that which he had spoke of his mouth, and his yearly sacrifice, or this yearly thing. He would take up his offering of his abundance that God had given and to the Lord, and offer it there as he was required. Now we'll see there, though, that about 9 months after they went up there last time, Hannah has a baby, and his name's Samuel. So Samuel's going to be about 3 months old when Elkanah goes up to offer, and he's just a child. In verse 22, and Hannah went not up, for she said unto her husband, until the child be weaned, when I will bring him, that he may appear before the Lord, and there abide forever. And Hannah says, I ain't going to go. I'm going to stay home. You go. And when the child gets weaned, then I'm going to bring him to appear before the Lord, and because there he's going to be forever. And Elkanah her husband, verse 23, said unto her, do what seemeth you good. Tarry until you have weaned him. Only the Lord establish his word. So the woman tarried and gave her son suck until she weaned him. So this was all right with Elkanah. He said, that's fine. You do that which seems right unto you, because this is the way it's done, till you have weaned him. Only the Lord establish his word. So God, in order to God to establish his word, that you have to establish your word with him and obey the vow which you have made by your mouth. And Elkanah would be knowing what Hannah had prayed for, and she had established this word through a vow. And she's explaining, I'm going to keep him till he's weaned, because once I take him to God, he's going to be there forever. 24, and when she had weaned him, she took him up with her with 3 bullocks, and 1 ephah of meal, and a bottle of wine, and brought him unto the house of the Lord in Shiloh, and the child was young. And we're going to see that when she had weaned him, she did what she had said, and she has took up with her 3 bullocks. 3, because this is complete. This is the complete offering. This is the complete presentation before God. And 1 ephah of meal. This would be a offering of free will, a free will offering that she's going to give, and a bottle of wine. And she brought him to the house of the Lord in Shiloh, and the child was young. And this bottle of wine is a drink offering presented before the Lord, the symbolism of the fruit of the vine. And when the bullock was slain, the child was brought to Eli, or Eli. And so after they slayed their bullock, after they'd made their offering, that which would go to the priest, that portion that goes to God, the child was brought to Eli, or to Eli. And she said, O my Lord, as your soul lives, my Lord, I am the woman that stood by you here praying unto the Lord. So she's telling Eli, she's saying, hey, I am that woman who stood here before you maybe several years ago, about 3 3 or 4 years ago, and I don't know how long she had nursed him. So she's reminding that woman here, you may remember me, 27, for this child I prayed, and the Lord hath granted me my petition which I have asked of him. So she's saying, this is what I had prayed for that day, and I had asked the Lord to give me a man-child, and this is the child that God had gave me, that which I had asked for. 28, therefore I also have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he is lent to the Lord, and he worshiped the Lord there. So we see that she is brought down, and she has dedicated Samuel to God, and this is going to be how Samuel winds up dedicated to God in the temple there, and he will serve God there in the temple because he becomes dedicated through this vow that she had made, almost to the point of that he is a Nazarene. All right, we're going to go to chapter 2.